President Buhari yesterday inaugurated his third board of directors for Nigeria's Sovereign Investment Authority, or the NSIA. The new board parades technocrats and professionals who will guide the affairs of the agency over the next couple of years. Joining me now for an exclusive interview to look at the immediate past board of directors, what they achieved and what to expect from the new team. And that's the CEO of NSIA himself, Uche Orji. Well, thank you very much, sir, for coming on the show this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We appreciate your time. Give us some insight into the operations of the NSIA under the immediate past board of directors.
Well, thank you very much. I'll probably like to remind you that this the last board was the second board of the NSIA. And to contextualize my answer, I'll go back to speak to the role of the first board, the second board, and how I think the third board picks up the baton and runs with it. The first board spent some time putting together the core foundations of NSIA, made sure we lived through the principles of accountability, transparency, and kickstarted the investment program of the NSIA, and laid the foundation of investing 20% of the fund in stabilization fund, 40% in future generations, and 40% in the Nigeria Infrastructure Fund. The second board drove more into infrastructure, changed the asset allocation a little bit, left 20% in stabilization, 30% in future generations, but shifted to 50% in infrastructure. And the reason was we wanted to spend more time looking at domestic infrastructure focus of the country. And this led us into quite a number of things. I mean, you saw us getting involved in healthcare, in roads, in agriculture, and in other aspects of the investment. Secondly, I think under the second board, we split our investment committee into two. One investment committee looking after the Future Generations Fund and the Stabilization Fund, and another committee looking after the Direct Investments and Infrastructure Fund. And I think as we looked at that, you saw that the reflection of that was more in seeing us get very deep into domestic infrastructure. And I think that is really the effect of part of the role of the first board, the second board. And I think as we go into this third one, the president has given us a mandate to drive more economic diversification and make sure there's more impact. So you'll expect to see more investments in infrastructure. That's always also been the strategy of the organization anyway. I think we've talked to that many times on this show, in previous shows on Arise TV. You're going to see us drive more and more into different aspects of infrastructure and direct investments in the country that will benefit Nigerians.
So what's the center or the key mandate of each of the two boards, really, if you just say, simply put, this is their mandate?
Well, I think the mandate is the mandate of the NSIA. The NSIA was set up with the objective of providing stabilization support in times of economic stress, set up with the objective of creating a savings fund for future generations of Nigerians. And then the third mandate is to invest to enhance domestic infrastructure. This is the mandate as established in the law that set up the NSIA. So there isn't really, and I think every iteration of the governance and leadership works towards that mandate. I mean, of course, the organization started with really nothing. There was really nothing, it was built from scratch. And so as time evolves and different boards come on, we are all striving to fulfill that mandate that was set by the law. And that's really what the law says. So it's about driving returns, it's about balancing impact and making sure you're making impact in the economy, balancing social impact and commercial returns, ensuring that investments are of national importance, ensuring that you are performing and earnings are not just on track with the markets, but also above the markets where we can make them better. So these are the things that I think board after board after board at the NSIA is working towards. And so there's really no difference between the mandate of the second board and the third board. We have an overarching mandate by the law of NSIA, but it's just about the evolution of NSIA as it grows and as it invests and as it makes more impact.
Yes, so the agencies has to make investments in various areas, home and abroad, and in various asset classes. How does the board arrive at making those decisions that are in the best interest of Nigeria?
Sure. Okay, so I think when you think about NSIA, it's important to understand that there are three different and distinct funds in the NSIA, each of them with a different investment policy statement, each of them with a different objective. So I'll give you an example. Let's start with the Stabilization Fund. What is the essence of the Stabilization Fund? It is to provide funds for the government when it is needed during times of economic stress. Last year, during the COVID crisis, the NSIA had to withdraw $150 million from that fund to give to the government. The government made a call as stipulated by the law, and you have to make that fund available within 7 days. That's the process we run within the NSIA. So that fund is invested in short-term liquid instruments. The investment policy statement was defined through management, working with investment advisors, and presented to the board, and the board approved it. And that was to invest in short-term liquid instruments, investment-grade instruments, and treasury bills, but mostly kept in US dollars. So that's the essence of that fund, Stabilization Fund. Very little risk. Then Future Generations Fund, the board decided that we needed to not take as much risk as our peers were taking. So we split it in four parts across the four asset classes that we invest in. We invest in private equity, 25% of the fund. We invest in public equity, again, 25% of the fund. And we invest in what we call other alternatives and then hedge funds. We tweak these things around within a certain strategic asset allocation range, depending on how we see the market. So, for example, last year, when the market opportunity came up and things were not as strong in the market, we took advantage to invest. So we increased our allocation into public equities, and that paid off handsomely last year. And so the decision process is very intricate. I mean, management takes, we meet 3 times a week as management level, but then, of course, it goes to the board if we want to make any changes. Now, one more thing you need to know, we tend to run this also by an investment advisor who we work with, international investment advisors. So these are some of the processes we undertake.
Yeah, within the tenure of the last board, you've done investments in agriculture, in healthcare, diagnostic centers, and what have you, in Louth and elsewhere. Now, these are some of the areas that seem very interesting, that should interest Nigerians. Give me about a minute of that.
Sure. So let me switch now to the infrastructure fund. The infrastructure fund, we have, process-wise, we make sure the investments are of national importance. Now, very important for us that investment benefit is not privatized, it's something that benefits the country. We make sure that we can get commercial and social returns balanced, make sure that we can attract other investors with us, and then make sure that there are conducive legal and regulatory environments. These are the 4 tests that we must pass. Because of the size of the fund, we decided to start with a handful of sectors. We added some sectors later on, but we started with toll roads, agriculture, healthcare, power, gas industrialization, financial markets infrastructure, and more recently we added technology. So these are the areas we are focused on at the moment. We're developing projects here, we're investing in projects. In healthcare, we developed our first 3 projects. With Louth, which was a cancer center, and the radiology and diagnostic centers in Kano and Umuahia. Those have become very successful, actually better than I expected. We now have a mandate to now roll out 20 across the country, including a center for advanced medicine that we're going to build here in Abuja in partnership with somebody else. Agriculture, the president designed the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative, which we've run, we've evolved, we've restructured that. It continues to be successful. When we started, there were less than 7 blending plants. Today, there are 51 blending plants. When we started, there was shortages of fertilizer. Subsidies were very high. Today, there's an excess quantity of fertilizer and hardly any subsidy. And then there's a lot of domestic production. That is success. We've also gone on to make direct investments in agriculture. We have a farm in Nasarawa State, for example. And then, of course, about the 3 big road projects, Lagos-Ibadan, Second Niger Bridge, and Abuja-Kano Road. These are all things that we're working on.
Yeah, when we return, Uche, we'll ask you to unveil your new board for me. What's their pedigree, their experience, the new team you'll be working with as a CEO moving forward, and what Mr. President's mandate was yesterday. We'll be right back, everyone. Stand by. Yeah, welcome back. And taking our exclusive interview with Uche, the CEO at NSIA further, President Buhari yesterday asked the new board to make more investments that support economic diversification. Uche, the CEO at NSIA. So thank you very much for your time. What should be expected in this regard, specifically when Mr. President says your new team, your new board should make investments that relates to economic diversification? What's Mr. President asking you to do?
Basically that, I think the question and the demand is very straightforward. And that is to drive more investments in the domestic sector. And I think we're going to see perhaps more of the direct investments of the NSIA that I think will benefit a number of people. I mean, at our inaugural meeting, we talked through a number of things. And it is quite, for me, very heartwarming to see the evolution of the various boards of NSIA. This is the third board, and the quality of conversations going on within the board, you can see the strength and diversity of the different board members, especially with regards to having deep local knowledge within the country. I mean, we're having conversations about logistics in Yobe and in Lagos and in Port Harcourt and agriculture and healthcare and all sorts of things. So there is enough strength and depth and knowledge to continue to drive that. So look for us to do more of the domestic infrastructure investments. Like I said before we broke, we have a plan to do 20 of these healthcare projects. That, I think, is going to create a lot of jobs. Each of those projects, the Lutz Cancer Center employs in excess of 100 people. And I think in the diagnostic centers, we have more than 50 people each, and we're going to have 20 more and a big hospital coming up in healthcare. Not only is that going to save us, foreign exchange going for medical treatment abroad, which we saw with the Lutz Cancer Center during COVID. People couldn't travel. So most people that unfortunately have cancer ended up coming to our center. And we have top class treatment, brachytherapy, linear accelerators, all sorts of things are then working. We have good therapists. The second thing is, of course, you've seen us in agriculture, and you're going to see more in agriculture. The farm in Nasarawa is doing very well, which is very interesting. But there's a lot more in logistics that you're going to see us play a role in agriculture. This, I think, is going to be very important for economic diversification. But what's even more fascinating is what you're going to see us do in technology. You're going to see us, we haven't been in technology for a while. We started investing in venture capital 2 years ago. And now we're going to start making direct investments in technology. And it's everything from networking, from submarine cable systems to cable landing stations, all the way through to metro network, fiber network.
Okay, so if I may just cut in there.
Software as a service and fintech.
Yes, I was just about to ask if you're putting some money in some of our fintech startups, these young folks that some Canadians and others are picking up under our belt. I don't want them to take our lunch. So will you be taking some of this lunch?
So there are ways to invest in them. The NSIA has invested in almost every private equity company that exists in Nigeria today. And we made a decision to also invest in private equity firms and venture capital firms, that exist in the country. So we've started making those investments. And so some of our venture capital and private equity investments that we've made end up investing in those companies. So yes, we do have some exposure. One step removed, yes, but at the moment, that is the level of exposure, because it's also risk managed for us. As we've continued to develop and evolve, we're now feeling more confident to start taking direct steps into this area. So just watch out. That's all I can tell you. A lot of work has gone into a lot of them. And I believe between now and the end of the year, you'll see us announce a number of really important interventions or investments in this area. This is something I feel very, very confident that Nigeria is going to build a competitive advantage. When we're investing in healthcare, one thing was clear. In New York, Nigerians have a competitive advantage in healthcare. Same in London. We have doctors, we have good people. So healthcare investments for us was fairly straightforward. Same in technology. There's an emerging competitive advantage in technology that we're going to have to work hard to help grow as NSIA.
Let's quickly talk about your new board. Unveil your new board in just a minute for me so that we meet them.
Oh, yes. Our chairman is Mr. Farouk Gumel. Mr. Farouk Gumel was a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and then he's gone on to work for a conglomerate that's involved in commodities and agriculture called TGI Group. He's an executive director there and chairman of a number of their subsidiaries. Farouk Gumel is somebody who knows the NSIA very well. We met in 2012, actually, when I arrived to start the NSIA. And the then Minister of Finance, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, introduced Farouk and I. And he's been very, very close to the NSIA, ran our first strategy session. So this is not somebody who's a stranger to NSIA, knows the story very, very well, and has been very instrumental in the history of many things that we've done, including fertilizer, roads, and all that. So he's the chairman, and we're very glad, and it's an inspired choice of the president. We're very happy to have him as our chairman. We have Ali Goni Kadagum, top scholar at College of Education in Yobe State, who's also now a member of the board representing Northeast. There's Mr. Ike Choke, a first-class civil engineer, runs AfriInvest West Africa, Rhodes Scholar at Oxford, was a managing director at Solomon Smith Barney when I was an associate at Goldman Sachs. So somebody I've also known for a very long time and somebody that we're very privileged to have on our board. We have Oniongi Kabiru Suleiman, who was at the NDIC as a top examiner, representing North Central, who's also joined our board. And then there's, of course, Ikemi Shekwena, who is a lawyer. He's a partner at Simmons Cooper. The law requires that we must have an eminent legal personality, and Ikemi Shekwena is that lawyer, and he also represents the South-South region of the country. And then finally, there's Tunde Shobomawo, who represents the Southwest, again, somebody very experienced in the capital markets, who's also joined the board. So very diverse group with deep experience across many sectors. Many of them know Nigeria better than I do, know various aspects of investing better than I do as managing director. But the interaction of the board, first day for me was truly remarkable. Every day you learn, and I think this is one of the things I found really fascinating just from early interactions. And I have very high hopes for what this board will accomplish.
Yes, I would like to, you have a very good team, and my next question is, how is the NSIA positioning for some of, how would your new board and the existing executive management team position for the global economic and market developments, such as the US Fed inflation interest rate outlook, the tapering of bond buying by the Fed, and so on?
Sure. Look, I think if you remember when we spoke during our earnings announcement, and even in January, maybe sometime in first quarter when I spoke on the show, I made it clear that one of the things that really worried me was inflation. We had a very successful 2020, and I was very clear that 2021 may not be as strong as 2020 because we were going to start taking some risk off. Now, we may have taken some risk off too early because one of the other things also emerging in the market, unfortunately, is that against all the data of inflation and growth that's not quite necessarily matching up to the stock market's exuberance, really, people continue to invest in the market because many times people have come to realize they have no options. And so you're seeing more and more money going to the market. But we've taken some risk off, right? A number of things for us is that essentially what you mentioned, which is inflation. Some of us are old school when it comes to investing, and I understand what inflation can do to the markets. It's an extraordinary tax on the market and makes it very difficult for people to invest. What happens with inflation? Interest rates have to rise to slow down inflation, and once they rise, equity market goes down, bond markets go down. So we decided to take some risk off. And you saw us also swivel more to Europe. We started buying more European equities because Europe has a lot of value versus highly richly valued stocks in the United States. So there's a lot, of what you call value investing going on in Europe. So we made a switch into European equities a little bit at the beginning of the year, and we're going to maintain that. Look, I would rather just leave the last 5-10% on the table than chase it all the way and fall off a cliff. We are very nervous because the markets have run far ahead of what I believe the fundamentals represent. So we've taken some risk off. Yes, so far so good, yes, but I just think that there's a lot more reason to be a bit more cautious going into the rest of the year. Tapering is coming up. It has to happen at a certain point, and I think that has its risk elements as well.
Yeah, we have just about a minute, Uche, for this exclusive. Give me just about 30 seconds, an idea of your full year 2020 at NSIA.
Full year 2020, and we spoke about it a long time on the show. Last year, because we reported Naira, so I'll probably just speak to it specifically. We earned 160 billion Naira in 2020. If you took out the impact of exchange rate revaluation on some of our positions, which was 51 billion Naira, we actually returned 109 billion Naira. The key drivers were investments in private equity, investments in venture capital, shift to developed market equities away from emerging markets. So as markets rose in the United States, Europe, and Japan, we took advantage of that and earned some really good returns. We've also seen some of our subsidiaries turn up and start making some good profits, from Nigeria Mortgage Financing Company, InfraCredit, and our healthcare companies all starting to turn around and make some decent profits. So it was a good year, 2020. 2021, so far, so good. That's all I will say. Yeah,
this is September. We're going to have you here on the show in the last couple of weeks or so in the fourth quarter, October, to give us 2021 numbers. Thank you very much for being with us exclusively tonight. Uche Orji, CEO of Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority. We thank you very much and wish you all the best and the new